I know you've heard this that 93% of what you communicate has nothing to do with the words that you say and everything to do with everything else that your body is doing and or not doing. And think about the complexities of that as we are in a hybrid society where we're meeting virtually with stakeholders and decision makers before we even meet them in person. So that means we're responsible for a lot of those social and emotional cues that we don't get in person. We're responsible as leaders for catching them online. And that's what I want to talk about today, right after the intro. Virtual communication is probably just as complex as in person, face to face interaction. And this is why in 2025, I'm challenging all organizational leaders to master the art of reading what we call digital body language. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm Linnita Hosten, and organizational leaders hire me when they are ready to communicate more confidently so that they can effectively lead their teams. There are three areas that I want to talk about today as it relates to uh, digital body language. And one of them is not related to the body specifically, the part, but a function of what shows up as a body in a virtual space. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Here's the first one that I want us to be cognizant about, and that is our upper body language. And that would be from your chest down to your waist. Obviously, your head is included, and your neck is included in that as well. But your upper body is what most are going to be focused on since they can't see your lower body. But, it's not just the upper body, it's really the torso and how you are seated in a chair. It has a lot to do with your posture. The same effect that it would have if you were in person. The reason why I'm starting and highlighting this is, when you are in a virtual environment, we assume, or I'm not going to say we assume, we're more comfortable with the mindset that I'm not in a room with people, so I can be more relaxed. And depending on the nature of your virtual engagement and whom you're speaking with, I think that your posture and your upper body language does matter depending on who you're speaking with. And a very easy way to ensure that you have positive upper body language is to sit somewhat on the edge of your seat, like I am. You can't see my chair, but if you could, I'm sitting on the edge. So I could sit back in my chair like this. This would be me sitting back in my chair. And notice how that changes my posture, obviously my sound too. So I always sit on the towards the edge of the seat so that I can have more awareness of my back posture. And so that helps me to sit up. A cheat, I would say like a cheat code when you are wanting to put more focus on your upper body language is to really lean forward. So if I were, I'm going to move my mic up a little bit so I can make this point. But if I were to lean in like this as you were talking to me versus leaning back like this as you were talking, those two body positions display something completely different. So if I were seated a little further back from you with my arms crossed, or it would communicate some bit of comfort. Some would say maybe even disconnect or disinterest. But when you are engaged in something, typically you are closer to it. It's the same thing when you're having a very intimate conversation. You wouldn't do it from across the room. You will wait to have proximity with that person face to face. And so think of your body as mirroring in a physical proximity as well. So you sitting up, talking to a person, even if it's virtual, has a really powerful display of engagement. And that's the goal we want to be not only displaying, but also looking for and teaching others. So that upper body language or that upper body posture is something to definitely keep in mind. Now, here's the second thing. I feel voice cadence, pace, tone, volume, all those things in a virtual environment, they're literally what we have to draw emotional cues from outside of someone's facial expressions and their posture. The next would be their voice pattern. And so think about the last time you were really engaged in a conversation and your voice probably naturally had really high, lows, faster moments, slower moments. And that's that mirrors how we naturally communicate. And so your voice pattern in a virtual environment, depending on how long you're speaking, you could grow accustomed to speaking in a very monotone, especially if what you're presenting is not exciting. Well, I'm here to tell you in a virtual environment, it requires more energy, which means even if you're not excited about it or it is not exciting, you have to manufacture that excitement. Manufacturing means make it up, put some energy into it, create the energy that you need to get the information across. So I want to share with you a few weeks ago. Well, this is early in November. I did a workshop for a government agency, and I told a story. And it's always easier to show the difference of variation in terms of tone as well as pauses and pacing, meaning the speed in which you're speaking. And I want to show you this story as an example. So I'm going to press play. We're just going to watch a few minutes of it. Last year, when the weather changed, I noticed I really struggled with productivity. The loss of sun, the weather being colder. Some days there were no sun. There was no sun, and my mood was off. My eating habits were off, and these things are mutually linked. When your mood is not well and you are not well, sometimes your finances will not be well because you begin to emotionally eat. You start coping other ways. They're byproducts of each other. So this year, before the weather changed, I signed up for a vitamin subscription. Now, I never took vitamins before, but I remember what it felt like October last year. I barely wanted to work. I struggled, and I didn't want to feel that again. So I started the vitamin subscription October 1st, taking them every day, and I committed to walking. Now, I don't really like to work out. I'm the girl that buys the gym membership, barely uses it, but I really admire those who are running on the street, and I'll buy the gym clothes. I just never use them. But I made the commitment that I'm going to move because my body remembers what it felt like last fall. And I'm proud to say it's November. We are almost 60 days into my regimen, and I feel amazing. I have not lost productivity. My mood has not changed. And what you're experiencing today is not a manufactured energy. This is who I am. And I've been more diligent in my finances, meeting my savings goal each month. I'm eating well. I feel good. So holistically, you matter. That me care piece isn't something that's just on the slide. That's something that I live. And it makes it easier to show up and deal with change management, to deal with my team of 20. So I wanted to show you that as an example of a different cadence when you are in a virtual environment, why those variations in tone matter, why those momentary pauses, why they matter, and your volume and pitch and excitement, changing them up, helping to keep someone engaged. When I'm teaching you this podcast, that's a bit different from me doing what we call a virtual workshop, because right now, to be honest, I'm anticipating most people will catch this as a replay. But in those environments, the example that I just showed you, I'm actually talking to people who are watching me in real time, and they have questions and comments that are coming up. And while nothing compares to being in a room with other people and getting energy through them being there, there is still an energy transfer when you are communicating virtually and you can see people's body language and faces based on those cameras that are turned on, of course. So, I say all that to say, when you show up to lead a meeting, and this is the context in which I'm referring to, you're showing up to lead a meeting, there's an energy needed from you that's going to transfer through your digital device. And if you ever need inspiration on these things, watch your local newscaster. Look at what they're communicating about. A lot of the times it's not exciting. They do have some heartfelt moments and some special moments that they give recognition, but a lot of the times what they're sharing or reporting about is either emotional, heartbreaking, sensitive, safety related, and they have this ability to generate energy around it, even if the energy is not always positive. So think of them as your rule of measure when you're looking to deliver information. Look at how they get excited, what they do with their hands and their body language. Look at how their posture, their upper body language, what it's doing. I think that's a really great benchmark to the standard of, I would say, high EQ virtual presence. It really is. The last thing that I want to mention to you before I let you go is we got to get rid of these virtual backgrounds because they impede on our ability to create trust, especially within an organization. This is a real background. Look, this is real. And when I learned about this, how, when we first transitioned to a whole hybrid virtual model during the pandemic, I had a virtual background and my head would be floating in and out of it depending on where we were. So then I purchased a green cloth and that gave me like a green screen. And okay, so then I wasn't floating in and out of it. But people know when your background is not real, and it creates a little bit of, I wonder what they're hiding from, or I wonder where they are. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but I wonder who's around them, since I can't imagine the room that they're in, who's sitting beside them, who's listening to me, especially when you're meeting with someone one-on-one. So a rule of thumb is if you have a recurring meeting, try to do it in the same space. That also helps to create trust. If you're doing it in the same space where your natural environment is exposed, that's a sense of intimacy. You're letting people into wherever you are. So this is just something to think about. The psychological barrier to a virtual background, I would love to see a study behind it, but just think about when you're watching someone who has a virtual background and think about the questions that you are typically asking yourself, like, I wonder if, I wonder where they are. And in the world of virtual environments, we do not need any more distractions. So let's not reduce our credibility or create distracting environments by having an unauthentic space. Invest in having a neat and professional background. And it doesn't have to look like this, although this was very inexpensive to create. This is wallpaper from Amazon, and it was very easy to install. And you don't even have to have that. You could also paint a wall a color, a bold color, and sit in front of that. It doesn't have to be something so grand like this, but it should be nice and neat and something that wouldn't cause a distraction to those who are watching you from wherever you are. Now, those are the three areas that I want us to think about as we are, attempting to create trust and collaboration within our organizations, even if we're meeting with them virtually. Now, if you have to do a virtual background, I want you to opt for one that's subtle and the most professional option. So anything with dramatic colors, which are typically dark, or a lot of distractions in the environment, unless you work in that kind of industry where creativity is welcome and or normal. But if you are in a more of a conservative space, neutral tones that are subtle are probably going to be the most professional option. And if you are not quite comfortable showcasing your full actual background, consider doing the blur effect on your real background instead of a complete virtual replacement. So there still is a sense of, I have an idea where you are and I can see your background, although I can't make out everything that's there. And I know I don't have to say this, but the quality of your lighting absolutely matters, especially if you're presenting information. Your skin should be true to color. So if you are up against a window and sun is shining directly on you, that's a good thing. But if it's behind you, then you will create a cast over your face, or if it's beside you too. So you want to make sure that your skin is true to color. That's a really good measure for your lighting. And your camera quality can vary based on the device that you're using. But as long as we can see you well and hear you well, you're good to go with me. All right, so remember, we're not just talking about how you can have better meetings or better relationships. We're talking about better leadership. And the virtual world isn't going anywhere. And I want us to get comfortable mastering it. So if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and share with someone whom is maybe needing a little support in developing their virtual leadership communication style. I love all things communication. So if today's content, if you learn something, I think you might be in a good space to keep coming back to learn something else. I want you to drop a comment below. What's your biggest virtual communication challenge? What is your biggest virtual communication challenge? And I read and respond to every comment. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. Now, I am grateful that you watched all the way to the end. I want to remind you that I do have a free community. If you go to growmyspeakingskills.com, you can join us over in the free community. And we post content every week. We also have a practice class every Wednesday. If you have an upcoming virtual presentation that you want to practice for, bring it to our group and we'll walk through that together. And also, if you just want to learn more about the skill set of communicating better and the holistic approach to communicating as a leader, you'll find all of that information in there as well. And did I say that it was free? growmyspeakingskills.com. It is free. I love you. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. I'll see you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Standard Eastern Time. All right. Bye now.